Not all video games age well. They're a relatively new form of art, so that's just the way things are. Games that were once considered groundbreaking can end up being incredibly clunky and borderline unplayable 5 to 10 years down the line, but poorly aged doesn't mean it's a lost cause. That's probably why I love remakes so much. While TV shows and movies generally have a pretty bad history with remakes, video games have shown to really benefit from them. When you remake a game and have pretty visuals and tighter gameplay, it can often end up being the definitive way to play a game and making the original at least feel obsolete. It seems like remakes have always been popular. Even going back to the Super Nintendo, there's been a weird obsession with trying to improve games that had to be made with less powerful hardware. Mario All-Stars on Super Nintendo, Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes on GameCube, Resident Evil 2 on PS4, this trend never truly died, and some games don't even have much history to begin with and simply need a touch-up for better resolution and performance, which is where remasters come in. Remakes and remasters tend to go hand in hand, which is why they're often clumped together. They both have the same intention: take a game and improve it by taking advantage of new hardware. The difference between the two is usually down to how much work needs to be put into them. Remasters are typically just ports to newer systems and include better resolution, performance, and textures, with maybe some bells and whistles added in. See Zelda Twilight Princess HD, next-gen Grand Theft Auto 5, Okami HD, and countless others, including the mountains of HD collections. Like, wow, it's amazing just how many of these damn things there are. While the game looks prettier, might have better controls or small gameplay tweaks, the core experience is ultimately the same. Remasters are usually for games that have aged well, but just need a new coat of paint. Since Switch and PS4 have no backwards compatibility, remasters have been especially popular lately. Even though PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2 have both been confirmed to be backwards compatible, I doubt these are going away anytime soon. They're relatively quick to make and don't usually need many resources to pull off, especially when they've still got the source code lying around. And hey, what's wrong with wanting to improve games that are already good? On the other hand, we have full-on remakes. Remakes drastically change the presentation, often resulting in a completely different look and feel, along with noticeably changing the gameplay, like introducing mechanics from newer games in the series, improving the faults of the original release, or just adding more content. If we're lucky, it's all of the above. Some remakes choose to recreate and improve the original experience as much as they can, like with Pokemon remakes, Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, and Shadow of the Colossus PS4, while others use the original game for a rock-skipping competition and reimagine it as a brand new game entirely, almost like how they would make the original game today. See Metroid Zero Mission, Resident Evil 2, or the upcoming Final Fantasy VII remake. But whichever way a remake goes, a remake should try to be the best way to play its respective game, not to mention how magical it can be to have one of your favorite games looking and playing this good. Remakes can end up being the way to go, but that doesn't mean they're easy. Sure, they don't need as many resources as a brand new game, but remaking a game can be just as hard as making a new game from a creative standpoint. How can we improve the game without detracting from what made it so good to begin with? How can we make the presentation feel faithful to the original? If we took out this bad section, what would that change? Can we improve that section instead? And in the case of making a brand new game for a remake, how can we make a new game that still feels like the original? What if we're introducing new problems when we could be fixing old ones? Remakes aren't quite as straightforward as they sound. The same goes for remasters, but it's not nearly as common. Just putting up an existing game shouldn't be too hard in theory, right? As long as they don't introduce new glitches or something. So, what does a good remake look like? The most obvious thing to do with a remake is just make it look pretty as hell. The Crash and Spyro trilogies, Halo 1 and 2 Anniversary, Star Fox 64 3D, Shadow of the Colossus PS4, etc. This is mostly the same game here, but they made it look like something that would fit in with the other games on the system. There's nothing wrong with this. They're kind of like remasters, but look far better than a simple retexturing. Although the majority of remakes at least try to improve the gameplay of the original. They not only look better, but they play better too. For example, Zelda Wind Waker HD introduced a swift sail that lets you sail through the ocean faster. The sailing was pretty slow in the original, which I didn't really mind back then, but now the whole sea is loaded at once, so we can sail at nearly twice the speed. Although speedruns seem to run just fine in the original, even when Link becomes Super Michael Phelps, so I don't know why they made sailing so slow on GameCube. Or with Majora's Mask 3D, save points now let you make a permanent save instead of a quick save. You can fast forward down to the hours so there's less waiting around, and you even get fast travel quicker to make the game's pacing smoother overall. Although they screwed up Zor swimming, so I get why people hate this version, but the pros vastly outweigh the cons in my opinion, and that makes the N64 original pretty hard to go back to. Or you can look at Pokemon remakes. They not only let you trade with the newest games and use newer Pokemon, but the mechanics have been updated to the standards of the newest game too. For Fire Red and Leaf Green, they took the original generation of Pokemon to make it look, sound, and play like Ruby and Sapphire. The mechanics of that of Gen 3, and they squashed nearly every bug and oversight from the originals, which is actually kind of impressive to be honest. There was even new content added, like a female player character, the Sevi Islands, Elite Four rematches, and a roaming Entei Raikou Suicune that they don't tell you about. Whole Gold and Soul Silver, basically the same idea. Gen 4 mechanics and look, But in Johto, they even let you access some new Pokemon evolutions like Mamoswine and Ambipom near the main adventure, which is a nice touch. Although, if you could let me use a Leafeon or Glaceon, that'd be great. Oh, and they added a new Safari Zone, a ton of new legendaries to catch, and even slapped on Platinum's Battlefronts here, just for good measure. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are mostly like this as well. Gen 6 mechanics, new legendaries to catch, even a new post-game store that has you ride Omega Rayquaza into space to split a Meteor in half and then fight Deoxys. In space. This is still awesome. They got rid of Emerald's Battlefronts here though, so I'm still annoyed about that. But sometimes, in order to improve the gameplay, it's best to make a new game entirely. You know, the likes of Metroid Zero Mission, Resident Evil 2, and Final Fantasy VII. I imagine that this kind of remake isn't done too often just because of how much can potentially go wrong. Because with most remakes, you take a game and improve the gameplay and presentation. If done correctly, it's a straight upgrade over the original. But when you're making a new game the same vein as an old one, who's to say the remake would be better than the original? When you start to drastically change a game, it's a process that can be potentially alienating to longtime fans. Maybe the new version of this game strips away everything that made you love it so much to begin with. But despite how little this style has been done, it was also surprisingly good. Metroid Zero Mission is one of the best games in the series, and basically made the original Metroid brand new in the same vein as Super Metroid, albeit without as many sequence breaks. They even added a stealth section after where the original ended, which I thought was actually kind of cool considering how short it was. Afterwards, they give you a ton of new abilities so you can one-shot everything on your way to the new final boss. That's always fun. Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia is kind of an in-between of new and old. The story and characters were more or less rewritten entirely, with several new characters added. They put in a limited use undo button, and there's even full voice acting for the first time in the main series, with those latter two features even making the cut into 3 houses. Although the gameplay is pretty similar to the original except for some tweaks here and there, they didn't even change the difficulty spikes. Like, could you have gotten rid of those, please? It's pretty hard to classify Echoes as a new game or not. The remake is a totally different experience from the original, but the gameplay is mostly kept the same. Like, Bukut, easily one of the best characters in the series, wasn't even in the original game. That alone gives the remake a totally different vibe. And then we have Resident Evil 2 that took the PlayStation original and made it more like an action game akin to Resident Evil 4. I hear this remake is really damn good, but I haven't played it or the original, so... But I have played part of Resident Evil 4, and believe me, this looks more appealing to me than this. Final Fantasy VII is basically just making its own entirely new battle system, expanding every single event in the game to be more fleshed out, and just overall reimagining the game as if it was being made as a AAA game today. Honestly, this remake looks really damn good, but I don't know, it feels weird to abandon the original game when it was already pretty solid to begin with and just needed a new coat of paint. I know this game already has a remaster, but the graphics haven't aged well at all, and honestly brings me out of it at points. I really hope the remake isn't too drawn out. It's being released in episodes, and apparently each one is enough to be its own game entirely, which is something that could go either way. The original felt kind of aimless to me after you left Midgard, which is why I lost interest after the first disc, so if the remake still feels like that, but worse, I'm not sure if I'll like it. Longer doesn't necessarily equate to better, but that's just speculation on my part. The game's still in development, so whether or not the game is just as good, if not better than the original, can't be said until the game is released. That doesn't mean people won't stop complaining about games they haven't played though. Believe me, I'm not done doing that yet. Good remasters are plentiful, but they're pretty self-explanatory. Just take a game we already have, put it on the most recent systems, make it a higher resolution or frame rate, improve the load times, fix some bugs, all that jazz. The line between remaster and remake is usually in how much of a graphical overhaul is done. For example, Shadow of the Colossus on PS3 is a remaster because the original graphics are mostly kept the same but at a higher resolution, while the PS4 version is a remake because the graphics have been made to look on par with other PS4 titles. There is a subcategory of remaster though, enhanced ports. The game more or less looks the same, but with maybe a higher resolution and more content added. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Chrono Trigger on DS, Animal Crossing on GameCube, Persona 4 Golden, you know, games like those. They're kind of an in-between of remaster and remake. The game looks too similar to be called a remaster, but you can't call it a remake either because nothing's been remade. They're a weird subcategory, but the extra content is a nice bonus if you didn't play the original. Not all remakes and remasters are good though, far from it. Because as well-meaning as remaking or remastering a game is, that doesn't mean it's always done well. Take Doom on Switch. Yeah, let's force you to make a Bethesda account to play a single-player game for the 90s. Makes sense to me. It's otherwise a good port from what I hear, but why would you do that? This was apparently a mistake, but considering modern-day Bethesda, I can't tell if they were trying to see how much people would let them get away with, or they somehow figure out how to screw up a Doom port. It's pretty sad that either possibility is just as likely. Moving on to the genius minds of Konami, how about we lessen the fog in Silent Hill 2 and completely ruin the game's atmosphere? Like, Silent Hill took depth fog, an almost necessary evil during the time, and turned it into a horror game. Who thought that changing the game's atmosphere in a horror game was a good idea? Not to mention all the new bugs, objectively worse voice acting added, and weird retexturing. Like, you know you screwed up a remaster when the original looks better. In a similar vein, what if you took out all the swearing and cartoony visuals from Conker's Bad Fur Day? You get whatever this is. Conker Live and Reloaded does look really good, especially on Xbox One, but I don't know, all the realistic fur and overdone lighting detracts from the original art style in my opinion. And not to mention all the censored language. Like, it was apparently okay on the kiddie Nintendo system, but when it's on the super mature Xbox, we gotta take all that stuff out. Sorry guys. Think of the children playing this M-rated game. Like, okay. No wonder they included the N64 version in Rare Replay. I should really get around to playing Conker at some point though. But if we're looking at remakes that kill the original art style, look no further than Cave Story 3D. Not to be confused with Cave Story on 3DS, which is a port of the Wii version because that's not confusing. Cave Story 3D took the great pixel art from Cave Story Plus and replaced it with crappy 3DS models. Not to mention the game can be really hard to see at all. Like, Jesus, why is this game so dark? I know that it takes place underground, but it didn't look so dark and lifeless in the original release. It did add some new content, but considering it plays and feels objectively worse, the extra content isn't worth it. If you want to play Cave Story, play literally any other release. Okay, so we can screw up a remake or remaster by butchering the original art style or making the gameplay worse, but sometimes you have remakes that aren't straight upgrades. Like with Super Mario 64 DS, you have 30 extra stars to collect, a new multiplayer versus mode, a ton of fun minigames, and 3 new playable characters. You don't need to play the game in Controller Port 3 on a Thursday with all the lights off to play as Luigi this time, but the drawback of this version is that you have to play the game that pioneered the use of an analog stick that allowed 360-degree movement with a D-pad. What? I am convinced that 64DS was just made to show off that the DS could handle 3D games. Otherwise, you have an objectively better game, but with worse controls. And this is my preferred version because I'm that weirdo that grew up with it. God, I know this game controls worse, but playing Mario 64 with an analog stick feels weird to me, as backwards as that sounds. You can move with a touchscreen and this weird thumb pad that I lost years ago, but it's just not the same as an analog stick. If we could remaster this remake on a system that actually has an analog stick, then it would honestly be one of the best games ever made. Persona 3 is another game that lacks a definitive way to play it. You can either play the Fez release on PS2 that has more content than the original, including a new 30-hour epilogue, or you can play the PSP version that has an optional female protagonist, new music, and the ability to control your party members, but it lacks the anime cutscenes and the answer epilogue, while the school life portion is turned into a point-and-click visual novel. Gameplay-wise, Persona 3 Portable is significantly better. Like, holy hell, not being able to control your party members in a turn-based RPG is really stupid. The game's designed around it, but no. That's just stupid. The presentation really took a big hit in 3 Portable, which can be an issue when one of the best parts of Persona is the flashy presentation and really well-made anime cutscenes. You're not really missing much with not having the answer though. I haven't played the answer myself, but it's really repetitive and grinding from what I hear. I think that 3 Portable is worth it for the better gameplay, but some still prefer 3 Fez for the better presentation. If we got a remaster or remake that gave us all the content from both versions and even better presentation, then we would have an even better game on our hands. And speaking of remakes with worse presentation but better gameplay, look no further than Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest, I mean Dragon Warrior 1 through 3, are all on NES, but got improved remakes on Super Famicom only in Japan, where it's actually called Dragon Quest. But if you can't speak anime, then the only way to play the improved versions officially is either on mobile, so screw that, or on Game Boy Color, which doesn't look or sound nearly as good as the Super Famicom versions. But actually, Dragon Quest 1 through 3 are all on Switch now, making this whole section irrelevant. And same deal with 8 and 11. 8 was originally on PS2, then got a 3DS remake. The 3DS graphics aren't nearly as good, and it removes the orchestrated soundtrack for some reason, but there's so many gameplay tweaks and improvements that it makes it infinitely better to play. Although there was a mod to restore the original soundtrack, so I really question why they removed it to begin with. Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition, wow, that is a title, is coming to Switch pretty soon. Maybe it's actually out by the time this video is up, I don't know, school's time consuming. But like, 5th first, same as the first. Worse graphics than PS4 and PC, but it's got a new orchestrated soundtrack and so many gameplay improvements and extra content that it makes you question why you like the original to begin with. This is making it real tempting to finally play a Dragon Quest game. Worse presentation isn't really a deal breaker, and these, I guess, remakes show that sometimes gameplay can still be drastically improved, even with less powerful hardware to work with. And for that, these are honestly pretty impressive, even with the drawbacks they have. So while Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valencia is a pretty easy to understand improvement over Fire Emblem Gaiden, the first game was a different story. There was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon on the Blade of Light on Famicom, which was the first Fire Emblem game. Then Gaiden was the second game, and the third game, Mystery of the Emblem, was not only a remake of the first game, but also included a direct sequel to it. Imagine if Crash Insane Trilogy also included a brand new Crash game. Like, that's weird as hell, but not a bad thing either. But then this game got DLC in a sense via this Teleview called the Okinea Saga. DLC in a Super Nintendo game that was only available for a limited time and he couldn't save it after the broadcast ended. The 90s were weird, but the kicker of all this is the remake of the remake. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon is another remake of the first Fire Emblem, and only the first. Yeah, despite Mystery of the Emblem including a remake of the first game, they just said screw that and made new Mystery of the Emblem a separate release entirely, and only in Japan. Why is this so confusing? Why didn't they just release both games at once like on Super Famicom? Was there a culture space limit? Budget constraints? Lack of time? I don't know, man. Fire Emblem's complicated. I guess this is just a long-winded way of saying that remakes are awesome. No matter what form it takes, seeing a game you like updated to modern standards is always a magical time. Like, when Alpha Sapphire came out, I absorbed everything about it. Your favorite game only gets remade once, if you're lucky. I wasn't taking this for granted. When the Link's Awakening remake got announced, I freaked out, man. Link's Awakening was a great game, held back by awful controls, and now we have a version that looks like this, and it actually has more than 2 buttons. Oh my god, thank you. Even when your first time playing a game is with a remake, it's still a great way to get into a game you previously missed out on. Like, if you missed out on Crash and Spyro like I did, now they look like this. Or, if you're just now wanting to get into Kingdom Hearts, you can get every game in the series other than 3 for like $40, and in 1080p 60 FPS. While not all remakes and remasters or, you know, good, it's always interesting to see what went wrong. Maybe the developers made changes that they thought were improvements to the experience, but fans thought otherwise. At least I hope that they didn't make it worse on purpose. Cave Story 3D looked good at the time, but oh man, even the original looks better nowadays. If anything, looking at bad remakes just makes you appreciate the good ones even more. Remakes and remasters aren't going away anytime soon, luckily. Like, we've got Link's Awakening, Medieval, Ni no Kuni Remastered, Xenoblade Chronicles, System Shock, Panzer Dragoon, and Final Fantasy VII all coming out within the next year or two, and that's just to name a few. If we're lucky, maybe they'll finally finish Black Mesa. Like, god damn, I bought this game nearly 2 years ago for $5. Please finish it already. This has been Flame Guy, and I'm really hoping that that Metroid Prime Trilogy HD is actually real. Anything to hold me over for a brand new Metroid game. Take care, and I'll see you all next mission.